I want to tell you something that I did not fully understand until I was 72 years old and sitting in a hospital waiting room while my sister had a procedure that we were told would be routine and that turned out to be more complicated than routine. I sat in that waiting room for 4 hours. And somewhere in the third hour, when the magazines had been exhausted and the phone had been put away and there was nothing left but the waiting and whatever I brought to it, I had an encounter with my own interior life that I had not been expecting. Not a dramatic encounter, not a revelation, just a slow, honest inventory of what was actually there, inside the life I had been living, beneath the schedule and the routines and the competent management of everything that needed managing. What I found in that third hour was that some things were there and some things were not. That I had been living in a way that was full in certain dimensions and genuinely empty in others. And that the difference between the dimensions that were full and the dimensions that were empty was not about circumstance or luck or the particular shape my life had taken. It was about attention, about what I had been paying attention to and what I had been letting go unattended. My name is Dorothy. I am 84 years old. I was a pediatric physical therapist for 40 years, which means I spent most of my professional life helping children recover the use of bodies that had been injured or compromised, or simply formed in ways that required additional work. I retired 12 years ago. My husband Richard and I have been married for 50 years. We have 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren, and a life that looks, from the outside, like the life of people who have done things reasonably well. What I want to tell you today is not about what the life looks like from the outside. It is about what I have come to believe makes it genuinely good from the inside. And the measure I am using is not success or accomplishment or the accumulation of anything. It is 5 things that I believe, with the certainty that comes from having spent decades watching people at their most vulnerable and their most resilient, matter more than almost anything else between 70 and 90. Not everyone will have all 5. I do not have all 5 in their fullest form. But I know the difference between the days and the seasons when these things are present, and the days and the seasons when they are not. And I want to tell you what they are. The first thing is a body you are in honest conversation with. I spent 40 years working with children whose relationship with their bodies had been disrupted. By injury, by disease, by conditions they were born into, by circumstances that had altered the basic terms of physical experience. And what I learned across those decades is something that sounds simple and that I did not fully understand until I was living it myself. The relationship with the body is exactly that, a relationship. It requires the same things that any relationship requires: attention, honesty, the willingness to hear what the other party is communicating, even when what they are communicating is inconvenient, and a quality of respect that does not diminish when the body becomes less capable than it once was. Between 70 and 90, the body begins the work of renegotiating its terms. Things that were reliable become less reliable. Things that were effortless require effort. The physical self that you have inhabited for 7 or 8 decades begins to offer you a different kind of information than it offered you at 40. And the question is whether you are willing to receive that information honestly, or whether you are managing it, suppressing it, performing a relationship with your body that no longer corresponds to what is actually happening between you. I see this pattern in women my age with a regularity that concerns me. The woman who pushes through symptoms she has been taught to dismiss as normal aging, without ever asking whether normal aging requires this level of management. The woman who has stopped swimming or walking or doing the thing that used to connect her to her own physical pleasure, because the doing is harder now, and the harder makes her feel diminished rather than challenged. The woman who has made a separate peace with discomfort, rather than bringing the discomfort into honest dialogue with the parts of herself that could address it. An honest conversation with your body does not mean medical anxiety or obsessive monitoring, or the kind of attention that makes the body your primary preoccupation. It means something quieter. It means noticing without immediately dismissing. It means asking, what is this actually? And giving yourself enough stillness to hear the answer before you decide how to respond. It means treating the information your body gives you as legitimate rather than as a problem to be solved or an inconvenience to be overcome. The women I know who are genuinely physically well in their 80s and 90s are not the ones who fought their bodies the hardest. They are the ones who listened the longest, who adjusted when adjusting was called for, who found the movement and the rest and the nourishment that their particular bodies in their particular conditions genuinely required, rather than the movement and the rest and the nourishment that some general standard suggested. If you are in honest conversation with your body, you know what I mean. You feel the quality of it in your daily life. If you are not, you will also know. The not knowing is its own kind of knowing. The second thing is work that has nothing to do with being useful to anyone else. I want to be precise, because this one is the one that women of our generation most often resist. And the resistance is understandable and worth examining honestly. We were raised, most of us, with usefulness as a primary value. Being useful, being needed, being the person whose effort made things possible for the people around us. That was how we understood our own worth in the world. And that understanding served real purposes for real decades. I am not dismissing it. The usefulness was real and it mattered, and many things that exist in the world are there because women of our generation showed up and were useful without being asked, and without being thanked in the proportion the usefulness deserved. But usefulness as the primary measure of value does not hold up between 70 and 90 the way it held up at 35. The children are grown, the career is behind you or narrowing. The domestic demands have shifted, and if usefulness has been the primary organizing principle of your relationship with your own time, then the diminishing of its demands creates a kind of vacuum that is not the freedom it was supposed to be. It is a loss of purpose that has nowhere to land because the purpose was always defined in terms of what others needed rather than what you needed to do. The work I am describing is something different from usefulness. It is the thing you would do if no one needed it, if it produced nothing that anyone else required, if it existed entirely between you and the activity itself, without an audience and without a deliverable. The thing that has its own return, regardless of whether it is recognized or praised or even seen. For me, this is the garden. Not the garden as something that needs maintaining, or as something that produces food for the family, or as something that looks good from the street. The garden as the place where I think and my hands work, and time organizes itself differently than it does anywhere else. I have been gardening seriously for 12 years, and I am still learning things in it that genuinely surprise me, which is how I know it is the right thing. When a thing still surprises you after 12 years of attention, you have found something worth keeping. For other women I know, this is ceramics, or weaving, or the serious study of a subject that no one assigned. One woman I know from my working years has spent 4 years learning medieval history with the thoroughness of someone who is going to be tested on it, though no one is going to test her, and she has no plan for the knowledge except the having of it. She knows more about the Plantagenets than most academics, and she is 81, and she is one of the most fully alive people I know. The knowledge is its own return. The study is its own purpose. What is yours? Not what did you used to do, or what do people think would be good for you, or what looks appropriately productive from the outside. What would you do with a Tuesday afternoon if no one needed anything from you and you had no obligation to justify the hours? If you know the answer, are you doing it? If you do not know the answer, the finding of it is the work. The third thing is at least one friendship in which you are seen clearly and loved anyway. I am distinguishing this from the friendships of occasion and the friendships of convenience and the friendships that are really extended acquaintanceships that have lasted so long they have acquired the vocabulary of friendship without quite having its substance. Those relationships have value, and I am not dismissing them, but they are not what I am describing. What I am describing is the friendship in which another person knows the full shape of you, not the curated shape, not the shape you present in social situations, or the shape you project in professional contexts, or the shape you have learned to present to the people whose opinions of you carry practical consequences. The actual shape, including the dimensions you would prefer not to acknowledge, and the parts that do not match the version of yourself you have always wanted to be. And they love you anyway, not despite, alongside, in full possession of the information. I have one friendship like this. Her name is Caroline, and we have known each other for 45 years. She was there when I was not the person I wanted to be in certain seasons of my life. She has told me things about myself that I did not ask to hear, and that I needed to hear. She has been wrong about me in ways I had to correct, and right about me in ways I had to accept. She is the person I call when something is genuinely hard, because she is the only person I know who will not immediately attempt to fix the hard thing or reassure me past it. She will sit with me in the hard thing and ask the questions that matter and be honest about what she sees. This friendship took 45 years to become what it is. I do not think it could have become what it is more quickly. The deepest friendships require enough time together to accumulate the specific history that makes genuine knowing possible. They require enough shared difficulty to demonstrate that the relationship can hold weight. They require enough honesty, offered and received, to establish that the truth is safe between you. If you have this friendship, you know exactly what I mean, and you know its value. If you do not have it, I want to ask you to think about why. Because I believe it is available to most people, and that the reason most people do not have it is that the vulnerability required to build it feels, at every stage, like more than the relationship is yet worth. The risk of being seen fully and loved anyway feels too large when you do not yet know that the love will be there on the other side of the seeing. But the love is there. For someone in your life, it is there. The question is whether you are willing to let yourself be seen fully enough to receive it. The fourth thing is a working relationship with the past. I want to be precise about what I mean by working. I do not mean resolved. I do not mean healed in the way that the word healing is used in contexts that suggest a completion, a before and after, a wound that has closed. Very few things that matter in a human life resolve that cleanly, and I distrust the claim when I hear it. What I mean by working is something more like the relationship a craftsperson has with an imperfect tool. You know its limitations. You have stopped expecting it to do what it cannot do. You have found the ways of using it that account for its particular character. You work with it rather than against it, and you have long since stopped wishing it were a different tool. Between 70 and 90, you have a past of considerable weight and complexity. Decades of decisions made under pressure and with incomplete information. Relationships that ended in ways you would revise if you could. Seasons of your life when you were not the person you meant to be. Things you did not do that you wish you had done. Things you did that you wish you had not. The full, uneven weight of a long life lived in the imperfect way that all long lives are lived. The question is not whether this past is complicated. It is. The question is whether you are still fighting it, still demanding that it be different from what it was. Still organizing significant energy around the maintenance of grievances or the rehearsal of regrets that have been circling for 20 years without arriving anywhere. I had a grief I carried for most of my 40s and 50s about a decision I made in my early career that had consequences for a child I was treating, and that I have never been fully certain was the right decision. I had done what I was trained to do and followed the protocols that were appropriate and consulted the colleagues who should be consulted and made the best call available to me with the information I had. The outcome was not what I had hoped for. I carried that outcome for a long time as evidence that I had been insufficient in some way I could not precisely name. What changed it was not forgiveness in the formal sense. It was a conversation with a mentor years later who told me that the capacity for doubt was not the same as the presence of error, that a practitioner who never doubted was more dangerous than one who carried uncertainty, that the weight I had been carrying was not evidence of failure, but evidence of the kind of conscience that made the work worth doing in the first place. I did not put the past down entirely. I do not think we put things down entirely. I found a way to carry it that did not require me to keep it at the front of my body, where everything else had to negotiate around it. I moved it to somewhere more internal and more permanent, where it lived as part of who I am, rather than as a demand on who I should be. That is what a working relationship with the past looks like, not the absence of difficulty, the integration of it, the willingness to let it be part of you without requiring it to be all of you. The fifth thing is the one I have thought the most about, and the one that I am still, at 84, in the process of fully understanding. The fifth thing is the ability to receive what is being given to you. I mean this in the largest sense and the most specific sense simultaneously. In the specific sense, I mean the practical help that is offered when your capacity diminishes. The offer to drive, the meal that is brought, the grandchild who wants to help with the thing you are finding difficult, the friend who wants to come and sit with you and does not need you to be fine. Most women of our generation receive this kind of help with a difficulty that we have dressed up as gratitude, but that is actually resistance. We say thank you, and we mean, I should not need this, and I am diminished by needing it. We are not diminished. We are human. There is no stage of life at which needing things from other people is a failure, and there is no stage at which receiving care gracefully is less than a full expression of dignity. The difficulty we have with receiving is not noble. It is a habit that was once perhaps protective and that has outlived its protection and become a wall. In the larger sense, I mean receiving what the present moment is actually offering. The grandchild who wants to show you something. The morning that is genuinely beautiful. The friendship that is deepened into something you did not know friendship could be. The book that opens something in you that has been waiting to be opened. The ordinary Tuesday that is, if you let it be, genuinely sufficient. Between 70 and 90 there is a temptation, which I have felt and which I think is nearly universal, to locate the goodness of your life in what was, rather than in what is. To measure the present against the past in ways that the present cannot win. To keep a part of yourself in perpetual mourning for the version of your life that existed before it became what it is now. I understand that mourning. It is real and it has legitimate claims. But it can become, if you are not careful, a way of refusing the present, of not receiving what is being offered now, because what is being offered now is not what was offered then. What is being offered now is different, not lesser, different. And receiving it fully, with the openness that receiving requires, is both an act of respect for your own continuing life and an act of genuine presence for the people who are in it. My granddaughter is 8 years old, and she visits on Saturday afternoons, and she brings with her a quality of attention that I have learned over the 4 years of her Saturday visits to receive as the specific gift it is. She wants to know things about me that no one else thinks to ask. What was it like when I was her age? What was my mother like? What did I want to be when I was small? She receives my answers with a seriousness that makes the answers matter in a way they would not otherwise matter. And the mattering is something I have learned not to deflect. I used to deflect it. I used to answer quickly and turn the conversation back to her, because her life seemed to me more interesting than the past she was asking about. What I understand now is that my deflection was a refusal to receive what she was offering, which was not just curiosity, but connection. She was building something between us with those questions, laying down the specific history of a relationship that she was going to carry forward into a life I would not see. And my deflecting was, however unintentionally, a refusal to be part of that building. I stopped deflecting. I answered fully. I let the questions be the gift they were. She knows things about my life now that my own children do not know. And I know things about who she is, about the way her mind works and what she cares about, and how she is building herself into the person she is becoming, that I would not know if I had continued to manage the receiving rather than allowing it. I am Isabel. I am 84 years old. I have a body that negotiates with me on certain mornings, and that I negotiate with in return. I have a garden that still surprises me after 12 years. I have Carolyn and the specific weight of 45 years of friendship that has survived enough honesty to become something I trust completely. I have made what peace I can make with the things in my past that required making peace with. And I am learning still to receive what is being given. Some days I have all 5. Some days I am managing 3 and reaching for the other 2. The reaching is the practice. The practice is the point. Between 70 and 90, you are in the middle of something that is more than you have been told it is. Not a conclusion, not a managed decline. A chapter with its own specific richness, available to those who show up for it, with the full complexity of who they have become. You have become someone considerable. Be that person. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is, in fact, everything. I want to go back to the hospital waiting room where I began, because I think the ending of that story belongs here. My sister's procedure lasted 4.5 hours instead of the 90 minutes we had been told to expect. I sat in that waiting room for 4.5 hours, and I did the inventory I described. And at the end of the inventory, I arrived at a clarity that I have tried to live from since. The clarity was this: the things that matter in a life between 70 and 90 are not the things that are most visible. They are not the accomplishments or the accumulations or the things that can be measured or compared or that carry social weight. They are the things that are present when you strip everything else away and sit with what is actually there. The body you inhabit and the honesty of your relationship with it. The work that is yours and no one else's, and that needs no justification. The friendship that has survived enough honesty to become something real. The past that has been integrated rather than suppressed or endlessly rehearsed. The openness to receive what is being given in this chapter, rather than measuring it against what was given in the last. My sister came out of the procedure well. The complication had been addressed, and she was going to be fine. The nurse came to tell me, and I sat in the chair in the waiting room, and I felt something that was larger than relief, though it included relief. It was gratitude. Not the performed kind that you express appropriately when things turn out well. The physical kind, the kind that arrives in your body as a specific and unmistakable sensation that says you understand in this moment what it would mean to have lost this person, and you have not lost her, and the not losing is enormous. I drove to her recovery room, and I sat beside her bed, and I held her hand while she came back to herself from the anesthesia. She was still slightly confused from it when she opened her eyes and looked at me and said my name with the particular quality of sound that my name has only in my sister's voice, the voice that has known my name for 77 years. Since before I knew it myself, since our mother first said it in a room in a hospital not entirely unlike this one. I want to tell you what I understood in that moment, because I think it belongs to the fifth thing, to the capacity to receive. What I understood was that being present for that moment, being the person in the chair beside my sister's bed when she opened her eyes, being the person whose name she said first, in the voice that had known my name for 77 years, was not something I had earned or arranged or accomplished. It was something I had simply been available to. The life I had been living, with its garden and its Caroline, and its working relationship with the past, and its slowly improving capacity to receive rather than deflect, had made me someone who was available to be in that chair. Available in the full sense, present, without the distraction of unfinished business or the weight of things unaddressed, or the performance of a person who is not quite here. That is what the 5 things give you. Not security, not protection from loss, not the guarantee that things will go well. Availability. The capacity to be fully present for the moments that require your full presence, and to have something real to bring to them. You are between 70 and 90. You have built something considerable. You have survived things and learned things and become, through the particular curriculum of your specific life, a person of depth and specificity and value that younger people cannot yet be, because they have not yet done what you have done. The question is not whether you are living correctly. The question is whether you are available to the life you are living. Whether the 5 things I have described are present enough to make you genuinely present in your own days. If they are, you are doing something right. Not perfectly. Nobody does this perfectly, but right enough to matter, right enough to be worth the showing up. That is the whole measure. The showing up with what you actually have, to the life that is actually yours, in the years that are actually available to you. Show up. Be available. Receive what is being given. It is enough. It has always been enough.